Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to wherever you are watching or listening from. My name is Jamie Robinson, and welcome to episode 306 of the Wakefield Trinity Heritage Podcast, proudly sponsored by the New Inn Pub and Restaurant in Walton, Wakefield. Right, let's get this over with then. This is Trinity BACKCHAT. We're about to talk through the 46-16 loss to St Helens at home in Super League round 23. Warm welcome to my co-host, my dad, Lee Robinson. How are we doing, Dad?
Yeah, it's one of those days that we don't have many of these sort of days anymore. We're a sort of different animal, different machine these days at Wakefield Trinity. So yesterday was one hell of a shock all the way around, and looks as though we're both sat here in black to remember the day.
Yeah, didn't realise that we're kind of a pathetic fallacy into it. I think that's what they call it. Yeah, Wakefield Trinity 16, St Helens 46. Try scorers Tyson Smoothie, Big Isaiah Vanganar and Jack Sinfield. Assist makers Jack Sinfield and Tyson Smoothie. Sinfield kicked 2 out of 3 conversions, and our Ken rolling points difficult in the respect that we can only really pick from one half. Really, we can't. We basically joked at the end of the game and said that we can only really pick from the first half because the second half was we were a total non-entity, weren't we? So 3 points we gave to Jack Sinfield, 2 points to Corey Hall, and 1 point to Caleb Hamlin. Well, Dad, before I touch on the stats, what's your initial thoughts on that game? Obviously, we're recording now about I don't know about 18 hours after the game finished. Just wholeheartedly disappointing, wasn't it? Really.
It was awful, wasn't it, really? Because for the first time in years, I felt confident turning up for a game against St Helens. And the St Helens have been so bad recently. They've won 3 or 4 games in the last 11 weeks. Whether it was me being disrespectful, but there's a lot of people thinking the same. It wasn't just a case of how we were going to win; it was by how many. And that was the attitude I had, and that was the attitude of some St Helens fans as well. I've got some friends who are St Helens fans, and they just thought they were going to lose every other game of the season, and they've been that bad recently. They're probably the worst St Helens team I've seen for a long, long time, up until yesterday. Some of the way they've played, over the last 2 or 3 months, they've been awful. Maybe we've fallen in love with ourselves. Maybe we've believed the hype a little bit. Yes, Leeds was a tough game last week. That was a 50-50 game, but yesterday was just dire, wasn't it? Even when we were winning, we were poor. And to lose a second half 34-0 is just unacceptable.
Yeah, to be fair, to us on the Bellevue breakdown on Monday, I thought we were relatively respectful to St Helens. We spoke a bit about what they were missing, but we made a point of saying that they're still going to have some big players on the pitch, and if we give them time and space, then they'll punish us, and that's essentially what we did. Like you said, that second half especially, we were in it in the first half. That second half especially, 34-0 to St Helens, and we'll talk about the stats, especially in that second half in a minute. Um, Possession wise, throughout the entire game, 42% possession to Wakefield, 58 to St Helens. St Helens had the ball 8 more minutes than Wakefield. In the second half, I've never seen any level of rugby league, NRL, Super League, Championship, whatever. I've never seen possession like this in one half. In the second half, St Helens had the ball for 67% possession. They had the ball for 28 minutes of the 40 minutes played. Wakefield had the ball for 33%. And we only had the ball for, like I said, 12 to 13 minutes that second half. That is complete domination in the second half. I've never seen that. That's kind of what you get in a Challenge Cup game against, a Newcastle Thunder back in the day when we beat them by 100 points at Featherstone. For St Helens to have not only the majority of the ball, but 28 minutes out of 40 in that second half is incredible. On top of that, completion, Wakefield Trinity, 72% completion. You're never going to get anywhere near to win the game with 72% completion. St Helens, 84%. And again, in that second half, Wakefield completed 66%, which again, you're getting nowhere near if you're below kind of 80% completion. But St Helens in that second half completed 21 out of 22 sets. They had 95% completion in that second half. So in the second half alone, they had 95% completion and 67% of the ball. No wonder they won 34-0. And again, that is Daryl Powell said it in his post-match press conference. That is beyond disappointing, and those stats alone are what you would see from, like I said, a Challenge Cup game, a friendly game where you're 2, 3 levels above another team. Average set meters 41 to Wakefield, 47 to St Helens. Post contact meters back to back weeks. We've lost out on this now, but quite considerably here against St Helens. 447 post contact meters for Wakefield Trinity, 613 for St Helens. Eight offloads for Trinity, three for Saints, five line breaks for Trinity, six for Saints, 13 errors for Wakefield, and eight for St Helens. And missed tackles, 39 missed tackles for Wakefield, and 28 for St Helens. How do you sum up those stats, Dad? Because especially that second half, we'll talk about the game as a whole, and obviously, like we've both said, we weren't that impressive in the first half, but just complete domination by St Helens in the second half, and we kind of let them do it to us as well.
We weren't even second best, were we? We were probably third best in a two-horse race. It was that bad. On the back of that, I also noticed that in the last 20 minutes, in the last 25 minutes, we only had five sets and we made three errors. So we actually only completed two sets in the last 25 minutes. And in that same time, St. Helens had the ball 15 times and made no errors and completed every one. Up until the first 22 minutes, we were 100%. We had 12 sets, completed the whole lot for the first 22 minutes, then dropped the next five balls. And then that's when it all sort of went wrong, really. We actually said, it's what do you blame? Injuries? I'm not sure. We beat Castleford a few weeks ago with 12 men, didn't we? We did change the whole pattern. There were a few things that I wasn't too sure about with the team changes, a few players playing off form, but all the way through, even when it were close, there was a few inches, weren't there? How we had inconclusive video captain challenges. The number of times we got over the a line and inches short of tries. But we actually said halfway through the first half, if you start giving Robertson, Hastings, Sailor room, Wellesby, that can cause damage, and they did. We actually contained them quite well. And while the score was 10-12 or 16-12 when we were still in it, I thought we need to score again quick and get rid of them because they looked tired. When we were 10-0 up and the heat was blazing down, they were looking tired. I thought if we can score again, we've got these. And we just couldn't kill them off, could we? And then in the second half, we just give them all space. And there you go. They scored, five tries in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think there were almost four phases in this game. I kind of zoomed out a little bit and tried to think about it, and not so much four quarters, but almost split into 4 20 minutes. I think in the first 20 minutes we were overplaying a little bit. I think we panicked when Rourke and Van gone off. Within 13 minutes they'd both gone off. Rourke after 4 or 5 minutes, Van after 13. And I think we panicked, and I think the major difference is when we went down to 12 men against Casford, we didn't panic and we simplified our play, whereas the opposite happened here. We actually still had 13 men. We panicked and we started overplaying in the first 20 minutes. Then in the second half of that first half, the last 20 minutes, I think we beat ourselves. That's when errors crept in. You're overplaying yourself too much. Errors crept in. We started conceding penalties. St Helens started dominating territory, but we still went into half time winning. It's so easy to forget we were winning at half time. And we lost 34-0 in that second half, but we were still winning at half time. And me and you were having conversations at half time of how we need to capitalise on this. That first 20 minutes of the second half, so the third phase, I guess you could see, I think St Helens beat us themselves. I think they just came out and pummeled us. And then in the last 20 minutes of that second half, we let Saints beat us. I think we rolled over, which I think I've probably said once or twice in the Powell era. And Powell even said it in his post-match press conference. He said effort wasn't there, which is very unlike Powell. He's very protective of his players, and Powell isn't the type of coach where effort is lacking. He instills urgency and resilience. But it was the complete opposite in that last 15, 20 minutes. And really disappointing and potentially the worst performance this year. I still stand strong that first game of the season against Toulouse was arguably the worst in the 3 years under kind of Ellis and Powell. But that second half yesterday was totally unlike anything we've seen, really. Obviously, at the minute, we're trying to retain a playoff spot. Not too long ago on the fans forum, we were talking about trying to get a top two spot. None of us really spoke about winning the league. I think a lot of us realised that was probably a little bit too far away from us. But we were definitely trying to say we can finish top two. If not, we need to get third or fourth to get a home playoff spot. And these last 6 games, these running games, are all playoff type games. And even the York at home is going to be a playoff type game because York are going to come on and bash us. Whenever Mark Applegarth has played against us, on the opposite coaching team is wanted to get one up on us, and they've done well against us of York, but and obviously they're not going to want to get the wooden spoon either. And play, since we've come into this last run in, we've lost to Leeds in the last 5 minutes, and we've got bashed up by a second-rate St Helens team. Seriously, if we're being honest. And if this was a playoff game, we'd have gone out in straight sets, wouldn't we? We wouldn't have stood a chance in the playoffs, really, if we're going to go like that. The turning point is obviously around 13, 14, 15 minutes. Rourke's already gone off. Van Gaana's gone off. We were 10-0 up, and the entire lineup just became a bit of a mess, really. But truthfully, we didn't look that stable to begin with. I know we went 10-0 up with those two tries. But in the first 5 minutes, St Helens made two breaks down that left hand side. Cameron Scott missed two tackles, and truthfully, Jacob Douglas absolutely bombed a try where he tried kicking weirdly inside field when he could have just dived over the line. I don't really know what he's done with that. So we were lucky enough anyway. St Helens had three clean breaks in the first 10 minutes. Could have easily been 10-0 up themselves, and we were thinking, oh, we've done well there. We've weathered the storm, and we can hopefully just try and bounce off the back of that, but. We never really looked comfortable in that first 10 minutes, and I thought Sinfield himself was touching that. I thought Sinfield was the one that was actually steadying the ship along with Smoothie, and he tidied things up quite nicely, and obviously got Van Gaana over the line, and we got a nice little try from Smoothie where he dummied and good and went straight through Wellsby. But we never really looked comfortable, and I initially thought we looked quite nervous, which again hasn't really been in our forte really for this year. But and then after that first 15 minutes, we looked completely rattled, and you could kind of sense that energy. St Helens are again a team who can play off the back of other teams, being rattled, being a bit fragile in defence, and they did that. By the end of the game, we had a centre at fullback. We had our two starting wingers injured in Pratt and Johnson, who obviously didn't start the game. A second rower in the centre at Staunton, Fat Attilly and McMeekin in the second row for most of the game, Smoothie at loose forward for the second half. And everyone just seemed completely out of sorts. We obviously ended up having two men. We played with 15 men for three-quarters of the game. Jazz had one of those games where he wasn't really at the races. He conceded, I think, three penalties and he had two errors. He played 39 minutes, I think it was. Trey went well off the bench, but played less minutes. Again, he's not really a guy who's going to be wanting to play more than 40 minutes. So we ended up with those two on the bench for most of the game. Caleb and Caius played way more than they're expected to. They played over an hour each. Caius actually played obviously all that game in the second row. We completely lost our explosiveness. We had no bench play anymore. And we lost our killer touch, really, didn't we? And the thing is, though, and Powell again highlighted this in the press conference after the game. In these games, in the playoff type of games, especially when you're at home against Leeds, against St Helens, it's going to be the same against Wigan next week. You've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You've got to be prepared if you get a man sent off, if you get an injury in a key position. In these high pressure games, especially if we wanted to play in a grand final and a Challenge Cup final, things are going to go wrong. And the likelihood of you having a plan A for 80 minutes of that game is not going to happen. And you've got to be ready to switch the game plan and everyone be prepared. And we weren't. And we weren't last week. I said last week we looked shaky, even when we were winning all the game. And Leeds had the same pace and they dictated the game from minute 1 to minute 80. They didn't change at all, and we struggled, and they ended up pipping us at the post. We looked completely knackered in that second half. You can blame the heat, you can blame the sun, but St Helens were also playing in the same conditions. And again, I know that Caius and Caleb aren't kind of bred to be those type of lengthy players, and Trey definitely isn't. But especially playing out of position, our boys look completely knackered. And lastly, kind of with fatigue, the aim of the game in rugby league is to create fatigue, because fatigue in the game creates gaps, it creates frailties in defence, it creates blokes shooting out the line, which again is what you want from an attacking team. And when we did that against Castleford weren't good enough to reap the rewards of that, and we ended up centralising our play and directing the play through the middle behind the ruck, and that's how we ended up just steamrolling Cass. St Helens are a good team when they can do that, and they still had key players on the pitch: Wellsby, Saylor, Hastings, Robertson, McDonald, Murphy. They can capitalise on that, and they did. And with fatigue comes breaking the line, and you look at their tackle breaks. Wellesby had 7 tackle breaks. Sailor had 5 tackle breaks. He got a hat trick himself. Murphy had 5 tackle breaks. McDonald and Saluka for Fafita had 4 tackle breaks. And Dad, I think that was the story of the game, wasn't it? Really, I think we didn't we looked totally rattled with the change in the first 13 minutes. With that came a total change in team psychology, fatigue, and we looked knackered. St Helens capitalised on it, and then we just had nothing in the tank.
Yeah, and despite all that, up until 64 minutes, we were still in it. It was still 64 minutes. We were just 16, 18 down. And then it all seemed to, and that's the last 16 minutes to go. And then it all seemed to go wrong. And it's just, and in that time, the chances we had, Jaden Myers, blew that try on the left side. The only thing I can think of is that Jay knows usually plays on the right wing, and he does score tries like that. He can actually reach out with his right arm. Whether because he was on his left wing, he just took it wrong and he slid in and his knee went into touch. He don't need us to tell us that wasn't great. Lucky Walmsley got over the line twice in the second half on 45 minutes and 59 minutes. They were both video ref decisions, and one they gave when the kick up, he gave a Corey Hall knock on, and the second one he put his foot in touch. So it was inches again. And then Harvey Smith, 54 minutes, that little break he made down the middle. Should he have given it to McMeekin? Should have given it to Caleb on the inside? It was literally inches short. So there were 4 chances there when the scores were 2 points difference. And so, no matter how bad we were, it was a matter of inches. And then after that, that St Helens scored those 2 tries. Where I don't know what Caius was doing because the ball looked as though he was going dead. Caius put his hand on it and he went back into field and scored. And then the second one, when I think it was Sinfield and Rodwell collided and somebody went through and scored. That's when it all crumbled. They went from 16 to 30-16. And then those last 3 tries were just silly, really. We just given up and they ran riot. So yeah, despite all the negatives and all that, we were still in it on 64 minutes, despite playing bad. And despite playing all over the field, you mentioned it, the fact that we were literally all over the place in our pattern, weren't we? I would never take Tyson Smoothie away from acting halfback. When Harvey came on, fair enough, but then he sort of moved out and he were out wide again, and it didn't work. I'm not sure why Walmsley didn't go to full back. You can't knock Corey Hall. He put a good effort in Corey at full back, but Lackland's played full back before. Um, and then we had, at one time we had 5 props on the field in the first half. Nothing else we could do because of the injuries. So we had McMeekin on, we had Caius on, and we had Caleb on, Trey on, and it was either Rodwell or can't remember. But there were 5 props on the field. But the one other thing, what we noticed, we missed Pitsy. I don't think that would have happened with Pitsy knocking round in the second half. He would have done something better in the middle. He could have come out of the pack as well and helped out the backs, but just his influence on the field as well. So yeah, one of those days, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's out of all the things that Powell says he likes, his team being versatile. On the bench yesterday, every single player on the bench only had one position.
Yeah, yeah.
Caleb, Caius, and Trey only play in the middle, and Harvey only plays at 9. Really, even though Caius played 67 minutes at second row, he's not a back rower. Caleb and could maybe fill in at 13. And Trey's an out and out prop in, and Harvey can't really play anywhere else but 9. So we were stuck. We didn't have a back row on the bench, and obviously we didn't have a full back. But again, how do you plan for that? If Pitsy was on the bench, he could have played in the arse, and we could have shifted some things around. But I just think we were so out of sorts. But again, we've got to be better against that. I always feel like if that happened to Wigan or Leeds or Warrington, they'd have just adapted and they would have planned for that to a point. And I feel like we just really struggled to do that. And then, like you said, it's mind blowing. Even though we went to the game and it's not even 24 hours ago, but with 16 minutes to go, there were 2 points in it.
Mm.
And truthfully, I never really felt confident of us doing anything. And then, like you say, it was just a complete calamity. That those 2 sets. I think Caius is trying to retrieve the ball and throw it over the line, and he misses it, and then he fumbles it backwards, and then it's just a easy try. And then, like you say, Sinfield and Rodwell are trying hard to get the ball and fall into each other, and the ball just falls into the lap of Sailor, and you just think, my word. And it was People are absolutely entitled to do what they want. It's their own money and they've paid for the tickets and the season tickets. But after that, Sinfield Rodwell, so many people left with about 12 minutes left, which me and you aren't going to be the ones that are going to bollock people for leaving. But there were a few people around us who were starting arguments with people who were leaving, saying that they should stay. I'm a believer it's people's money and they can do what they want, but. I think if you're going to be there for the good times, you've got to be there in the tough times as well. And in no way is this even a bad time. It's just a tough time at the minute, and you've got to stick with the lads, I think. But yeah, I think that the main difference, Dad, as well was the unforced errors. I was calculating. I watched the highlights back from the game. St Helens' first five tries, four of them came from our unforced errors, knock-ons or loose balls or spillages and whatnot. And we can't afford to do that. And I remember when we played Castleford, Bradford, Catalans in those short periods earlier on a couple of weeks ago, we had a lot of unforced errors there. And I remember us saying on this podcast, we can't afford to play like that against these bigger teams because they'll punish us. And you can see there, St Helens there, as poor form as they've been, they scored 30 points in 40 minutes, haven't they? It's just we can't afford to do it.
Yeah, and these sort of teams we're up against now, the playoff hardened, aren't they? You know, yes, we in a false position? Second place last week, we've dropped to fourth. If Hull KR beat Warrington on Tuesday, we dropped to fifth. Were we in a false position? We have had a good run and beaten all the easy teams, but we're in August, and Wigan, we know Wigan come good in August. Warrington, Hull KR, and Lee all look quite impressive over the weekend. And if we start dropping off, and these errors and missed tackles are part and parcel of rugby league, but we can't keep sort of doing that and making them costly, are we? Because like you just said, St Helens, the next set, they were scoring tries, and it wasn't just that; it was penalty, penalty, six again, drop ball, drop ball. There were a lot of those happening, and once the teams start getting on a roll and getting momentum, it's difficult to break it down again.
Yeah, I remember actually all the way back to our fans forum preview at the start of this year. We highlighted how we need to be in a good position by the time we get to the last six games of the year. Because even at the start of the season, when you're looking at a last couple of games of Leeds, Saints, Wigan, Warrington, York, Lee, no disrespect to York, but especially those five teams, we knew that they'd be up there. And it's kind of what we did. We've got into a good. By the time we played Leeds last week, we're obviously in second, and there was a little bit of chatter that we were going to win the league. Not from us, I'll say, but from a lot of media outlets. But and this is kind of what's happening now, I think. But I understand the fans' frustration, especially losing in the last minute to Leeds, was annoying. But I think a lot of people gave them the benefit of the doubt. But yesterday was really disappointing. Um, I really thought we missed Tom. I think that was a killer. Not many people knew that until the teams were announced. I thought Myers and Walmsley did all right. That their meter numbers were okay, but we completely missed Tom out of backfield. We couldn't get any more momentum from kick returns. Obviously, we lost Rourke from that perspective as well. We don't have Pratty at the minute. Corey Hall's really good at that, but really good at coming off the second play running behind the markers is not amazing at coming out of backfield because he doesn't train for that. And Tom, we've spoken. Tom will get 150 games a game with his eyes closed. He'll be getting 70, 80 post contact meters a game. The difference is nobody in our entire team got over 51 post contact meters yesterday. And Tom, like I said, Tom would do that in his sleep. So again, we're not only getting pinned down, but we're completely out of our depth in the backs as well. And as soon as Tom gets taken out of that, I said it again in previous back chats. You only realise how good Tom is sometimes when he isn't there. And Myers and Walmsley do a good job, but missing Tom out of those backfields are just really, really dangerous. So, like you said it already. Myers and Walmsley will know it, but the finishing needs to be better. We can't afford to be getting in such good positions and Smoothie knocking my microphone over. I'm that annoyed, but Smoothie and Truman getting us in really good positions and creating space and time for the wingers, but you need to be finishing those tries. And even if they're playing on the opposite side of the field, they are professional sportsmen, and you need to be able to adapt to that. Lewis Murphy showed exactly how to do it, didn't he? On the same side of the field, and he's been on some terrible form recently and got a load of stick. And I thought his performance yesterday outplayed Myers and Walmsley. Two tries from him, and yeah, Wakefield Youth Products, and I thought his finishing was great, but. Yeah, Myers and Worms will know it. They don't need us on a podcast to be telling them how to finish tries. They'll know that. But Yeah, disappointing overall, Dad, wasn't it, really? From anything that you liked, we'll talk about the Ken Rolling points. And I mean, there was pretty much nothing in that second half, wasn't there? But anything that you can take a slither of hope and positivity out from that game.
Not a lot, really, can you? I thought Sinfield was good again. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Ken Rolling points. I thought he's getting better, isn't he? You know, he's some of his ball in hand. He took his try well. It looks as though he was running through mud, running through treacle when he made the break. But how he got to the line, he took Sailor over with him. So that was pretty good. Um, it's different. There's nothing else to pull out. You know, you look at obviously Smoothie. We know all about Smoothie. 51 tackles. I thought Cat Rodwell was outstanding, to be honest. He only did 57 minutes, you see, which surprised me. So obviously the forwards had to do more minutes than normal. But I thought he's a workhorse. He's kind. He's one of those. Yes, he made the error near the end when he sort of clashed with Sinfield when they scored their fourth try, fifth try. I can't remember which one. But Rodwell is just like our silent assassin, just our underachiever, really. All the others have had a lot of press with the way they've played. Um, a couple of underachievers. I'm not going to start mentioning names on here, but yeah, there's not a lot, was there really? You know, the fact that 8,500 turned up, and probably about 4,000 left when the final whistle went. But like you just said, I was going to be quite critical to begin with of how people went home early. But like you say, we looked to give in that last 10 minutes, didn't we? So you can see why people were sort of drifting off, and we were sat on our own in the East Stand. Apart from that, I'm not sure. There's not a lot of other positives we can take from that. It was a nice sunny day, wasn't it?
Yeah, nice sunny day, wasn't it? Yeah. I even saw someone comment saying that he even ran out of pies in the Neil Fox stand as well, so it proves how bad of a day it was. Um, Ken Rolling points, we gave three to Jack Sinfield. We said, didn't at the end of the game, we can't really give any points for the second half. I thought there were a fair little bit of good defensive efforts, and some of the boys put in a lot of effort, but we pretty much had to base this off the first 40 minutes. And I thought Jack Sinfield were the player of the first half overall. I thought he was the best player on the pitch in the first half. Really starting to show his talents with the ball in hand and trying to take control of the game. I thought his kicking game was good. He was pinning down Lewis Murphy. We know that he's a bit weaker coming out of backfield as Murphy, so he was really pinning him down. And St Helens were struggling to come out of their own half in the first half because of that kicking game. Only last week, I actually went back and I thought, I'm sure we spoke about this. And it was only last week on the Leeds Rhinos back chat that we said his partnership was building with Isaiah Van And if he keeps giving those short balls, then one will come off soon. And we're going to start to have a Tim Smith, Danny Kermon partnership. And lo and behold, it came off this week. Superb drawing in play from Jack Sinfield. Drew in the man, dummied, brought, I can't remember who it was, it might have been Nenny McDonald who came out the line. Van went through the gap, superb timing, and he went over the line and blew out his shoulder, and that's his season done probably as well. So positives and negatives to that. But I thought Sinfield was great. He got to try himself as well, and he had to show real will and determination and fight to get over that line. He's not the fastest as Jack, and he runs like you said. He looks like he's running in quicksand and treacle at times, but he started to finish that try and he managed to get over the line. 2 out of 3 conversions, yeah, 91 run meters for Jack, which is pretty good. 4 tackle breaks as well. Um, Again, defensively, he gets targeted quite a lot, and when we put out the stats on our social media, there might be a few people looking at that and wondering how we've given him 3 points. But again, I'm going to try and judge it off what he did in the first half with the ball. And I thought he was our best player in the first half, and probably the best player on the field in the first half as well. And his dad was there again, Sir Kevin. But I thought he did well, Jack, in that first half.
Yeah, just reiterating what we said. He's lucky. I've liked him from day one. I always think he's quite a calm character. You know, when Mason Lino played, he was always a bit all over the place. Nobody knew what he was going to do next. When Jack's got the ball in hand, he's quite a nice, laid back, calm character. He's had some great games. He's sort of set up some lovely tries. You've just said that try he sort of put through for Isaiah Van. It was coming, wasn't it? You know, on that right edge, he just did a little dummy, and somebody shot out of the line, and he put and Van had a wide open space. That was a lovely try. The try took himself. Smoothly put him through a gap, and off he went. That was about 25, 30 yard run he made. Kicking 2 out of 3. He needs to sort of practice that kicking from the right side, doesn't he? He's missed one in the last 3 games at that, but yeah, he's coming on. He'll do with obviously he's got his chance with Lino being out for so long. And it'll be interesting how he plays against Harry Smith next week and Bevan French.
Yeah, with your physio expertise head on, I know it's a retired physio head, but Van Gaal, do you think he's done for the year now?
God, can you believe you dislocate your shoulder scoring a try? You know, in all my career, I've only ever seen one of those, and it was when the Aussies started. Obviously, the old style of scoring a try was you went over the line and put the ball on the line, just put the ball down. The Aussies started bringing in diving, so you wouldn't be dropping it. And I once saw an Australian dislocate his shoulder, diving over the line, and he had his arm wrong. Sod's law, isn't it? And Isaiah did that. So it all depends on what level of dislocation he'd done into, because when he went over, his arm was outstretched, his left arm. You can be anything from 2 or 3 weeks with a subluxation to 10 weeks full dislocation with surgery. But until he has his scan on Monday, we won't know, will we? But the fact that we've got 4 league games and a hopeful playoff, he could be out between 3 and 6. Who knows? We'll know better when he's had his scan.
Yeah, I think the positive news is that they said they managed to get it back in the medical room inside, but
Mm.
yeah, it depends on the damage done it. Sometimes if they can get it in quickly, then they can rehab it, and within 4 to 6 weeks they can play again. But the fact it sounds like it was out on the pitch, walking off. Obviously, me and you saw the way the physio was holding it. It was very, very stable and sturdy with trying to not move his shoulder. So it looks like it was still out of position coming off the pitch. And if he needs surgery, then that's his season done. So even if he doesn't need surgery, it's still going to be, you'd imagine, 4 to 6 weeks maybe, and it might be too soon even coming back near the playoffs. So
Mm.
yeah, just in the week where with Seth Nicotimo's gone as well, we suddenly find ourselves with no second rowers. So we'll see how that goes. 2 points, two Ken Rolling points to Corey Hall. Tough day at the office. Really won it really for everyone, and Corey himself thought he stood up well. He struggled a bit positionally. Obviously, he got caught out in the first half with that Jackson Hastings kick over the top, and a few high balls that he couldn't take. But there's no point picking on positional failures. I thought he did well. I thought his effort levels were there. He was in most of the right place at the right time, and he wouldn't have trained. He's been a fullback in his youth as Corey. I think he played fullback a little bit when he was younger. But I thought he did well. He did all right, didn't he? Most meters ran for us for Trinity, 155 meters from 16 runs. And he did well. I think a lot of people yesterday were just trying to look at who were the players who stood up and tried to do a little bit more than what they were asked of, and Corey were one of those. First points of the year, actually, first Ken Rolling points of the year for Corey.
Yeah, he didn't let us down, did he? You do look and think St. Helens scored 8 tries when he were at full back. But he's not. Sometimes it's not as though we're out of position. Sometimes there was one when they went that first try when Hastings kicked over and Sailor seemed to have a massive gap and just trotted over and caught the ball and scored on the post. But they kept pumping balls up for him. Hastings kept putting balls up for him, and I don't think he dropped one all afternoon. And he was under pressure a lot of the time as well. There's sometimes we didn't have support markers, but he took every ball. So I was watching him do that. And like in the second half, when everybody was just sort of fading away and not bothered, he kept having a go. Yeah, in the last 10 minutes, he was part and parcel of it when they were walking through our defence on our left edge. But yeah, I don't think he did all right, didn't he? He sort of people around us were saying he's doing okay. You know, the fact that he just kept catching every ball that they kept pumping up for him, 155 meters, he took the ball up well. Yeah, so it's difficult to actually pick anybody from that second half. But yeah, he stood up with Corey, didn't let us down too much.
Yeah, one Ken Rolling point to Caleb Hamlin Weller. We were very close to Tyson Smithy and Mike McMeekin again. They played the full 80, and Tyson again had 51 tackles. Mike worked really hard, but you could just see a lot of players were blowing up. We gave it to Caleb in the end. 64 minutes, he made 40 tackles and only missed one. Um, Probably the first time in a while he's not broke 100 meters though. 12 runs, 98 meters, two tackle breaks, and again his efforts off the ball were really high. I thought he did really well. Played beyond what he needed. I think probably 10, 15 minutes more than what he needed to do. But we could have given it to any Tyson, Mike, and Caleb. I think, but Caleb just edges it just because he obviously played much longer minutes and had a bit of an impact as well. But difficult really. But Caleb is. Um, yeah, especially rumours for the week that we thought he might be injured this week, but it was great to see him out there and always puts in the effort, as Caleb.
Yeah, it's just a shame he came on too early, wasn't it? Him and Kaius come on 20 minutes. The fact that he came on 4 minutes and did 64 minutes, he still did his work, but we didn't have that impact, did we, of that 20-minute marker? Looking back, would you have brought Trey on 4 minutes and then still save Caleb and Kaius on 20 minutes for that impact? Who knows? We're all experts after the after the event, aren't we? But yeah, 98 meters, 40 tackles in his time. I thought Mike Mamikin ran well. He did a good shift for 80 minutes. I thought I'm always impressed with Kai Rodwell these days. He could have easily got a point as well. And Smoothie with his 51 tackles. So it's others, yeah, a bit difficult, wasn't it? But yeah, that's when we came up with Caleb for a point, didn't we?
Only gets easier. We're going away next week. Probably going to be without Rourke. Definitely going to be without Van Ganar. Don't know about Pitsy. He's going to be back. Um, yeah, it's just creeping up on us now. And how do you see it going next week?
Oh,
Would you
I don't
change
know.
anything?
I don't know really. It's at if we play like we did yesterday, we'll concede 60. Um, so it depends what the way Powell thinks. Is he going to go over and think, right, we need to win this. We need to put our best side out. Like you say, Rourke he passed his HIA, but then injured his knee, so he was limping around at the end. Johnston's not going to be fit, we don't think, because he's still in a knee brace. Van Gaar's obviously done. Pitsy, I think he's torn his bicep, so he's out for 2 weeks anyway. So you're going to lose those. Pratty could be back. It's just what I'm trying to think. Well, what do you do for the second rows? You know, if we Pitts is out, Van Gaar's out, Seth's gone. You've got Staunton there. Who else do you put in? Do you start shifting McMeekin back to 11 and put Lolaseo in the front row and then bring somebody in? Then we're short. Um, do you put Tate on the bench? Do you bring people like Ellis Lingard, Jordan Williams, Noah High out of the reserves onto into the pack? I don't know. I know they're looking into the loan market for a second rower as well. There's not many around. You never know what Moneyball Mills he comes up with. So difficult, isn't it? You know, we could all. I try and sit here and pick the team every week, but it's never right. So I'm not sure really. I'm not sure. The fact that we're gonna win in August is a tough one.
Depending on, like you say, if Pratt does come back, I think the back line probably picks himself, and hopefully we've not picked up any injuries that we've not seen. Jowett probably comes back into fullback. We really need a big game from Jowett. Wigan away as well is always going to be tough. And then you're probably looking at Walmsley and Myers again, Scott and Hall, Truman and Sinfield. You're probably still going to go maybe, I don't know, McMeekin, Smoothie, Rodwell, Staunton, and then Jazz. And like you say, whether you do put McMeekin at second row, and then bring Trey off the bench again, but I want us to have Caleb and Kaya still coming off the bench, Harvey. I would be very tempted, and it's slightly left field. I would be very tempted to give Corey Abraham a debut. And I thought when I've seen him in the reserves at second row, he's been excellent. And it's almost a case of if not now, then why? And it's not. I don't want it to be a baptism of fire. Wigan away, we'll put a young kid in. But why not start him? He's still got a lot of good bodies around him. If McMeekin and Rodwell and Caleb and Caius and Matty and Jazz are going to be around him, he's not going to be. It's not like in the old, 10 years ago when we had six kids making the debut at Wigan. Um, and is he 17, 18? Let's give him a go. And I think the alternative is probably I think what they'll really do is put Cam Scott in second row and Will Tate in the centre.
Mm.
Is what they'll probably do. But I'd love us to take a chance and give Corey Abraham a go. I don't think Ellis Lingard. I don't know. I don't know if he can go at second row, but I know Corey Abraham can play in back row or in the middle. Um, I'd love to see it, and then we could just have a bench again of our strongest bench of Harvey, Trey, Caleb, and Caius. But I don't know what you think about anything like that.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? You know, they were keen to throw him in somewhere. The fact that we've sort of had all the easier games at home, I thought he might have been thrown in there. But when you look at the hit through the history of players who made their debut at Wigan, it is a place where you sort of blood some youngsters. I never even thought of that. You know, when you were talking, I thought Cam Scott will probably go in the pack, and if Pratty's back, he'll slot in or Tate. So that would be the answer. But yeah, it's a bit left field, isn't it? It depends whether what they're thinking this week. I watched him in the reserves yesterday. The reserves played Warrington in the curtain raiser, and he never lets you down. You know, the fact that he's got a lovely pair of hands, and he actually played first team in the friendly at Hull Kingston Rovers right at the beginning of the season, and he smashed some players. Why not? Like you say, if not, why not? And the fact that he's got some really big sort of support network around him, if he does start in the second row, interesting.
Yeah, and Wigan as well. Looking at their team, I mean, they've still got such a good team, but they've got a couple. They've got Keir McDermott played yesterday, Josh Cartwright, Shea O'Connor, Georgia Loughlin. So they're not afraid of putting these young kids in. And again, it's not a Wigan away of old, and it's still we're talking down. We're on poor form at the minute. We've picked up a few injuries, but we're still a playoff team. We're still fourth in the league. Oh, we're fifth in the league now. We're fourth. Where are we now? Fourth.
We're fourth, but then there's if Hull KR win on Tuesday, we're
That's right,
fifth.
yeah. So we're fourth in the league going away to Wigan, which sounds, scary and nerve-wracking, but it's not like we're 13th and going away to Wigan like we have done in the past. And Powell still fancy his chances. Wigan this year at home have lost to Huddersfield and Castleford, and
Mm.
Toulouse gave them a good kind of 50 minutes last week. So and hopefully the boys, we've got some strong figures in that team. And even though Pitsy Cap probably isn't going to play, he's going to be in the dressing room telling these lads that we've still got a really good chance and we still really need to do our best to pick up the performance. And hopefully, good teams bounce back from games like yesterday. Um, Bad teams don't. If a Castleford or a Catalan lost by 40 to St Helens, the next week they go and get battered again. We need to show that we're not that team. And ideally, this is arguably the best game we can have because if we played a lesser team next week, our motivation might be low. But going to Wigan away, we know it's going to be hard enough anyway. But we've just been battered from St Helens and lost in the last couple of minutes against Leeds. We need this, don't we? And I don't fancy us next week, if I'm honest. But I fancy us to have a dig, and I want us to have a really good performance. And I'd love for someone like Corey Abraham to come in and have a dig himself.
Absolutely, we don't. That's. I think we've got to finish on a positive, haven't we? We don't become a bad team overnight. Yes, we've had a storming season. We've absolutely. I've loved it. It's been one of the greatest seasons to watch Trinity for a long time. We were just so close against Leeds, weren't we? And it was that was the top of the table at home in front of a sellout crowd. And this is just, I'd like to think it's just a one-off. The players were coming out of the changing room yesterday, telling the fans it's just a one-off. We'll be all right. We'll be back normal next week. Let's hope it is. Let's just hope we haven't hit the wall and we're fatigued. And I'm a great believer in every team has a bad patch throughout the season sometime. What you don't want is that bad patch in August. We had two. We did all right last season. I think we lost to St Helens and Wigan twice on the trot round about August time as well. Let's just hope it's a one-off. If we get thumped at Wigan, and then we're going to be struggling for the, I think we'll still finish in the top six because I don't think St Helens will win all their four games. But we don't want to be sort of limping into the playoffs with a wet sail, do we? We want to be sort of giving it to Wigan next week. We've still got a great pack. We've waxed lyrical about our pack all season. We've had anything between 10 and 12 forwards that you could rotate in or out. We've lost three now with two injuries and one being released. We've still got nine great forwards. Let's just hope they're all on form, because we can take the Wigan pack on. Our backline against the Wigan players, who knows? On those big wide open spaces. But yeah, we've just got to take. Anything can happen at Wigan. It's a long shot, isn't it? We're going to be second best, third best in the bookies going over at Wigan after yesterday. But who knows? I've seen a couple of victories over at Wigan in our past. We won't worry too much about York yet. We'll just sort of build up this week and see how we go.
Anything else to add before we round off?
No, not really. I think that's it. Really, it was um, just one of those days, wasn't it? Not a lot of positive. We had a bit of a past players get together like we always do. Past players get can come in. It was nice to see Jerry Mann's tribute on the scoreboard, and understand we got some new toilets for the women in the north stand as well. So it was even though we ran out of pies, at least we got some new porta cabins for the ladies.
Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to episode 306, the Wakefield Trinity Heritage Podcast. You can find us all on social media and podcasting platforms worldwide and continue to like, follow, and subscribe in all our accounts, especially our YouTube channel as well. Massive thank you to my co host, Lee Robinson, and we'll be back in the next couple of days with an interview with our current flying winger, Lachlan Walmsley. I've been Jamie Robinson, and we will catch you all down the road.